What's the dumbest thing you actually believed? I used to think that people exclusively wore hats if they were bald, because that's why my dad wore a hat. As a kid, my sister told me that we had an older brother that died. She said he died when playing bowling and his fingers didn't come out the ball and slid all the way down the alley, then he turned into a skittle. I thought guys got periods too, but only once, and you bled and then you were able to impregnate someone. I cut my upper leg during a rugby match and was bleeding near my groin and was devastated because I thought everyone would presume I had my period mid-match and also subsequently would be walking around able to impregnate people. Worst thing is, I wasn't even a stupid kid, we literally just lived in a reserved country and I was a full-time boarder at my school, so never got to talk. My dog went to a farm until I was 35. I was convinced the Greeks still worshipped Zeus and other gods for a while after I heard the word Greek Orthodox Church as a kid. When I was a little kid, I believed that when people got divorced, they had a divorce ceremony, like where they had to go to church and say, "I don't," and I imagined the woman wore a black divorce dress, like her wedding dress had been dyed black, and that everybody went to the reception where the ex-bride and ex-groom sat on opposite sides of the hall and there was a divorce cake where the bride and groom had their backs to each other with their arms angrily crossed. I eventually learned, from watching my mom's soap operas, that this was not the case, and was kind of disappointed cause I'd been to a few weddings by then, and was interested in what a divorce ceremony was like. When I was a kid I used to think professional wrestling was real, and The Undertaker scared the living shit out of me during his whole Ministry of Darkness phase. I thought he actually was Satan's minister or something. Like yeah, he's an undead overlord of hell, here to bring an eternity of darkness and misery to this planet, but he also has to make a weekly television appearance to win a wrestling competition, and you can buy his action figure at Toys R Us. That the Great Wall of China had a cat adoption program. I was meeting my friend's boyfriend for the first time, and he mentioned that he had just adopted one of the retired Great Wall of China cats. China trains these cats to patrol the wall and kill vermin, and at the end of their 7-year stint they are retired and adopted out to a forever home. I kept asking questions about it. How do you apply? Are they a specific breed? How do they get transported worldwide? In the end, he told me that he made the whole thing up because my friend had told him I was really gullible and wanted to see how far he could push it, but he didn't think I'd get so enthused. The worst part? I was in my mid-20s at the time. More so naive and innocent rather than dumb, but still funny. My dad used to tell us kids that a dwarf little person worked in and operated every car park barrier in the world. Every time he drove up to one he'd press the button for the ticket and say "Cheers mate, how's the wife?" and fake a conversation as he waited for the barrier to open. Lol. That reindeer wasn't an actual animal but specifically a mythical animal that Santa Claus used. I believed this until I was 23 or so when I saw some nature documentary talking about reindeer. I was like, what? That someone could shoot me from the other side of a phone during a phone call. Whenever kid me was on a phone call, I always tried to end the call as soon as possible, and get away from the phone as fast as possible. When I was little, I genuinely believed the Teletubbies were evil and that if I didn't watch them on TV every night, even though I hated the show, that they would come and get me. To be fair though, they're kind of creepy. My 5th grade teacher gave me a lot of new knowledge. Uncle Tom's Cabin was the longest book ever written. Aesop wrote more than 100,000 fables. We learned how to do multiplication as a reverse form of division. The Civil War was largely about the Louisiana Purchase. Manifest destiny was the term given to the Pilgrim's journey west to discover North America. The Native Americans introduced smallpox to the Europeans. It goes on. In the middle of the year, we had a permanent substitute because my teacher was in the hospital. We were led to believe she had cancer. In my freshman year of college, when I was still learning that some things I knew weren't true, she drowned in her swimming pool after getting high on cocaine, a drug she struggled with her entire adult life. There are hundreds of us walking around who basically need to repeat the 5th grade. I thought Churchill was an architect because when I was little my mom told me he was one of the architects of Israel, that if you ask someone if they're a police officer, they have to tell you the truth. There are still people who believe this. Whoever started this urban legend is a genius. As a kid, I thought that the world wars were like battle royales where there were no alliances, no surrenders, and just pure bloody violence between every country on Earth. For example, I thought every country fought all of its neighbors simultaneously. I believed my uncle's roommate just slept on the couch, that sperm were the size of tennis balls and would burst forth from the head of your penis if you slept with a woman, slither across the bed up into her, and make the baby. Thanks. Facts of Life pop-up book with no adults willing to clarify that the objects within were not always to scale. That I could smell something while underwater. When I was around 10-12 years old, I was in a tropical themed water park where also happened to be a herbal bath. It smelled very nice, which I had not expected. Most of the tropical plants were fake plastic plants, so I figured the water in the bath was normal swimming pool water and the smell was coming from something else. The bath was surrounded with a small aromatic herb garden which didn't look fake. I sneakily took a sample from a thyme plant that felt surprisingly real. But because the air was filled with all the different aromas and a hint of chlorine, I couldn't smell anything different when I tried to smell the thyme. I figured the only place where my sense of smell couldn't be fooled by any fakery was underwater. For 5 seconds I actually felt pretty smart. Until I tried. When I was 6 I watched a movie, King Kong. And a scene with a bunch of black folks emerging from the mud appeared and I got a bit spooked by it. A bit later, I was at McDonald's with my parents and I saw a black family walk in. Thank God my parents are deaf or I would have asked, out loud, why are the mud people here? Mom thought I was racist but I was just a bit inexperienced lol. I believed I could kill people with my hands when my fish died after I took it out of the water when I was 4. So I never hugged or touched anyone until at school I poked a person I hated and he didn't die. I thought that teachers lived at school. A watermelon apple tree will grow out of my stomach if I eat the seeds. If you turn off a video game without pausing, the hero is left paralyzed and defenseless. Yes, I actually believed that. When I was a kid, my mom told me that people actually had gray skin in the old days for real, and that no color except black, white or gray ever existed back then. I believed that for way too long. 17. When I first saw the colorized photo of Charlie Chaplin, I was shocked. Then Gaston told me that no, people were indeed the same back then as we are now. Only the photos and videos were captured in black and white because of lack of technology. When we played Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, my little sister used to accept the lamest missions and not get good rewards. I told her about it and she responded with, how would you like it if you were a poor Pokemon that lost its mom and was stuck all alone and had nothing to give someone to save you? I laughed my head off at her because it's not real, but secretly, I feel that in my soul sometimes. Someone convinced me for like 5 seconds that unicorns were real. They just lost their horns through evolution and now they are plain old horses. That there was an incredibly fat, slimy dinosaur called the Blopiosaurus. I even made a whole report about it in kindergarten, based entirely off of the information my oh so intelligent and generous stepfather told me. Not me, but when I was 10ish I got my then 7 years old brother to believe that he was the reason the TV kept fritzing out. I literally told him that he was bad luck and that he had to go to another room while I tried to fix it. He genuinely believed it, and today he still gives me flack for it. Until I was way too old, I didn't know vaginas existed. I thought women just had blank space there and all births were C-sections. I used to be so confused about the amount of time it would take to make movies because I was convinced they did it all in chronological order, and when they did flashbacks to childhood, I was like, wow, those actors are so committed. Or I would think it must take a long time for their hair to grow or change in any way and never considered it could be a wig lol. That blood was blue until it hit oxygen via a wound cut, then it turned red. A surprising number of people still believe this. That I cool see atoms spinning in the air. Turns out it was visual snow. I thought that girls peed from their butts. Then I learned about vaginas and thought girls peed from there. It wasn't until I was like 16 that I realized there was another hole. Dogs equals boys and cats equals girls. I don't know, it made sense to me as a kid for some reasons. There's a girl I know who doesn't believe in space. Yeah, I said it. Space. Like what's beyond the sky. She does not believe it's real and that the stars are fake. That turkey's drowned by looking at the sky during a rainstorm. I am dumber than a bag of hammers. I thought Hawaii was in the Atlantic Ocean, since on maps it's tossed there in the box. Alaska usually was depicted right beside it, but I'm not a total idiot, and knew where that was. I was in my early 20s when I discovered the truth. When I was a younger boy I thought that if I was naughty Santa would beat me. I basically grew up on the beach. It took me 3 decades to work out that the tides go in and out twice in a 24-hour period. I used to believe that eating any fruit seed would lead to a plant growing in my belly. I used to think they dropped the ball at Times Square multiple times for each USA time zone. I just assumed people stuck around for the extra ball drops cause they were all drunk and having fun. My employer cared about me. I actually have a good one for this. My parents were super open about talking to me about sex reproduction from a young age. My mom always said, if you're old enough to ask the question, you're old enough to hear the answer. Well, I am just a super curious person, so of course I would ask a variety of questions about sex and where babies came from during my elementary school years. My parents kind of revealed parts of it to me over time, of course, telling me the most basic things first that I could really understand. So, I knew that the sperm from a man, which came from penis, would go inside the woman's vagina and fertilize an egg, which would grow into a fetus. Cool. How did the sperm get in there? Well, I truly though it just flew through the air, like little birds or perhaps a butterfly, up and into the woman's vagina. I didn't realize the logistical problems with this though. How does the sperm get through your clothes? And does the woman have to wear a dress? Well, I had questions, Mom had answers. When I asked her how the sperm managed to float magically from the man's penis and somehow find its way into a woman's vagina, my mom gave me the most horrified look. She realized she left out the part about intercourse, I think. I'd love to ask her now if she remembers this. Sadly she died in 2016. I'll never forget sitting in the bottom of the stairs with my mom, her looking down at me saying, Brantley, you don't know how the sperm actually gets into the vagina? What? No? They fly? No, the boy and girl have to have sex. Okay, the penis has to go in the vagina. Cue my world exploding. Everything made sense. Masturbation made sense. Sex scenes in movies made sense. So many jokes that went over my head. I exclaimed, loud enough to echo through the house, ooh. That people would be more intelligent, well-informed, and more rational as internet access became more widespread. I hope maybe it's still gonna happen with the next generation, but the older I get the more everyone seems either petty, childish, selfish, stupid, or a combination of all of the above. When I was a little kid, my grandfather had a small BW TV in the kitchen that he'd watch as he cooked meals. One day I asked him, if the rest of the world is in color, why did he keep the TV if it was broken, and he didn't know what I meant. I said, when the world changed to color, all the other TVs became color, but that one didn't, so why did he keep it? I believed, from old photos and old TV shows, that the whole world was once in black and white and one day it switched over to color, and all the old BW TVs, except for the one in my grandfather's kitchen, had switched over to color TVs too. My grandfather got a good chuckle out of it after I had explained my thinking. Funny story, I didn't actually believe this, my sister did. Me and my sister were 3 and 4. I was thirsty one day and wanted lemonade. My sister, who felt really bad because I got in trouble for trying to sneak a drink, wanted to give me lemonade. So, 5 minutes later, she gave me the lemonade and I drank all of it. After drinking all of it, I realized it wasn't lemonade. My sister thought that urinating in a sippy cup would make lemonade. That family is a happy word and that they'll always be good for you. For a couple months I enthusiastically read Holocaust denial topics which I thoroughly believed. I even debated it at a family gathering one time with my uncles, which had to have taught that I was a stupid teen. Oh, the joys of being 15 and thinking you're smarter than the rest. You need a photo ID to buy spray paint. Told to me by my mother when I was 13. Debunked by myself at 26 when buying a dozen cans for work had my license out and everything. That the trees created wind. I was a child at the time, but I feel so dumb about that one. I used to think TV static was a bunch of some type of microorganisms floating around in my TV that could electrocute you. Communism and the party propaganda. As a kid in the USSR I was totally sold on the idea that the Soviet state was the best and most progressive in the world. My commiserations to the people of the US, as you seem to be facing the same discovery now that I had 30 plus years ago. When I was a child, I didn't know how babies were made. I thought when two people get married, they're automatically given a baby by God. I studied in a Christian kindergarten. So I thought if they have siblings then their parents have to hold several weddings. Last night I saw this weird TikTok about mermaids and went to the comments and all the top comments were about how mermaids are real and all this evidence and people talking about documentaries they saw and all this shit, and there was so much discussion. So for about 4 minutes I was thinking, holy shit, mermaids are real and they are carnivorous beasts, holy shit, everyone needs to know about this. What happened to me, but I snapped out of it after that. I believed as a preteen that masturbation could cause me to impregnate myself. I did it anyways with much guilt and fear. Sometimes I would have anxious thoughts about the conversation I would have to have with my family if I did get pregnant. Side note, sex ed should be allowed to cover all the bases, in my opinion. In the 90s when I first heard about it, the theories floated around about Nibiru, the 12th planet, and everything around the end of the world in 2012. I was brainwashed by a kind of hippie commune who believed in all that stuff. I was still a teenager and the more I read about it, the more I realized it was just crazy theories that didn't make it in the end. I even lost a friend over it for some time. It was around June 2012 and I just told her that it was all bullshit. I didn't want to be mean, but seeing all the people in that community panicking and renting cabins on mountains to party on the night of December 30th made me realize nobody is immune to believing crazy stuff. It shows the importance of education and science, and knowing that not because a theory exists and makes sense that it's necessarily true. Sometimes you need a lot of critical thinking to debunk them. Today I am much more careful about ideas that make sense at first, but won't be demonstrated. My dad convinced me that our first 1990s computer monitor could take photos. I was old enough to understand the difference between input and output devices, but he was very convincing. I still think about what I may have been doing wrong. There was a bug which could bite you and leave freckles. When I was I got a bug bite on a freckle that I hadn't noticed before, and assumed the bug did it. It took me until I was 14 or so to realize how little sense that made. When I was 12 I got my appendix out. My mom told me I wouldn't be able to ride on roller coasters anymore, the reason being that there's now an empty spot in my body and my other organs will get scrambled if I go upside down. She had her appendix out and doesn't ride any amusement park rides, so it was semi-believable. She somehow convinced our family doctor to get on board with this, and Yahoo Answers didn't have any answers, so it went from semi-believable to very believable. Anyways, I didn't ride any roller coasters the whole summer, and my dad broke it to me at the end of the season that they were fucking with me. That being named Johnny was a sin. There's a part of the song "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" that goes, "My name's Johnny and it might be a sin, but I'll take your bet." I instantly associated the name with being a sin, not making bets with the devil. This made me think kids named Johnny were sons of devil worshippers. I was a very dumb kid. I used to believe that it always rained when people died. To the point I used to look at my mom on rainy days and say, I feel bad for the family of whoever died today. I do not know why my mom never corrected me. I had to be 10 before I clued in that was not how it worked. No one ever called me on it either. That there were whales in Lake Michigan. I wish this was when I was little, but no, I was in college. I've spent my whole life going to Lake Michigan every summer, and I fell for a satire whale watching page. I told my dad excitedly, and he looked like he wished he had the receipt to return me. My father and I used to mess with my sister as she was growing up. When she saw an orange tree for the first time, the oranges were unripe and very green. We then told her that all of the citrus fruits came from the same tree, and depending on when you picked them, that was the fruit you got. They started as limes, then ripened into lemons, which would grow into oranges, and then if left too long would grow into grapefruits. She graduated with honors from a major state university this year. We found out that she still believed this during our family trip to Mexico last spring, 2019, when we had to break the news to her. Women don't poop. I went through surges of genuine suspicion whether they do or not until I was around 20. Even to this day, I sometimes don't see my girl go in there for like 3 weeks straight and start getting suspicious again. When I was a kid, like 4 or so, I thought microwaves were called Mikhail waves and were named after my brother, whom I believed wielded the same amount of authority as the President and Captain Planet.